Hello everyone and welcome back to the Final Chicane with me, Kristen Boylan. So before we start today's video, I'll address the setup that we have going on. First of all, I don't know where my Final Chicane board is gone. I got back from my holidays and all the caps were knocked over and the board was gone. And I haven't had time to look for the board. It's probably in that mess over there. Second of all, my microphone broke. It did not survive the travel home. And it's my fault. I made the mistake of having it plugged in when I packed it away. So I had the wire plugged into the microphone. I'll show you here. If you're watching on video, I had that wire plugged in. And then I had this wire, just the rest of the wire wrapped around the microphone. And it bent the plug. Obviously, because why would I leave it plugged in? And even though I have a lot of leads the same as that, none of them are picking up when I plug them into my laptop. None of them is registering the microphone. So I had to resort back to this microphone, and we know the issues that I've had with this microphone and how it just stops working halfway through with no indication that it ever stopped working. So that may happen again if you find a significant volume change. There's nothing I can do because it just doesn't tell me. Anyway, today, first of all, to all the George fans listening, I'm so sorry. That must be the most painful race ever. I don't know the last time someone was disqualified from first place. I remember Seb being disqualified from the podium, probably 2021. And that, honestly, that's the last podium disqualification that I really remember. So I'm sure yesterday was the biggest mix of emotions ever, probably the most painful evening ever for you, for all of us, because I was devastated to see that happen to George. What else will we talk about today? We'll talk about the strategy calls. We'll talk about who will be in that Red Bull seat following the summer break, some moves that happened recently, and media, just everything, all of the usual we'll talk about. But first, let's do Riddle of the Week. I'm a German-born racer, once F1's bright star, drove for Seba, Williams, and Jordan by far. In '99, I clinched third, a season so grand, with victories in France and the Italians' land. Known for my speed and calm under strain, who am I in the motorsport domain? So, who is that? And he's quite a well-known driver. He's quite a successful Formula 1 driver. And your clue is that he competed in Formula 1 from 94 to 2003. You never usually get a clue, but I'm going to give you a clue about this one. Anyway, I'll tell you the answer and the whole story behind this person at the end of today's episode. Right now, we'll talk about the media moments from this week. And I will say, this is just the format that I do my podcast in. Maybe some people want to start getting straight into the race, and you can just skip ahead like halfway if you want to start talking about that. But I do it piece by piece because that's how I like doing it. And if you have a problem with that, that's actually not my problem because there's so many other F1 podcasts you could listen to. So yeah, I'm going to start with Media Day. Esteban, multi-year contract to Haas. Not a big surprise, I know. Rumours were sort of circulating about him going to Williams, but Haas to me seemed like the better option. They've definitely made bigger steps in the next few years, and for Esteban to get a multi-year contract as well is pretty good. It's a step up from Alpine, which is always a little unusual when you've been fired and then you end up getting a step up. But as I've said in so many episodes, I don't think Esteban deserved to lose his seat. I don't think he's worse than Pierre. So I'm happy for Esteban. And if anything, he proved himself this weekend that he deserves to be in that better team. I'm excited to see how he does in an environment other than Alpine because we just haven't seen that in so long. And unfortunately, there was a lot of criticism about him getting the Haas seat. A lot of, oh, poor Ollie Behrman for having Esteban as his teammate because Esteban hasn't always been known for getting on with his teammates. But, I mean, first of all, he got on really well with Daniel, so that's one anyway. Pierre, they were never gonna be besties. Alonso, sort of a given. Checo, yeah, I don't really know about that one. But I feel like Esteban gets such unnecessary hate. He is a good driver. He is one of the better midfield drivers on the grid. He's obviously never been in a top field car. He's he goes under the radar because the teams that he has been in have been very under the radar. I mean, obviously, he has made, I think, a big step up in performance since he came back into sport. And I am excited to see how he does in this next step alongside Ollie Behrman. He'll obviously be the more experienced driver. He might be leading the team. Who knows? I don't know. Like, maybe not. But yeah, I'm excited for Esteban. Alpine, new livery. They had a nice new livery, actually. Wolverine. I don't know what movie that is. Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't think I've watched Wolverine before. I don't know what Wolverine is, actually. I think I've watched Deadpool. That's with Ryan Reynolds, isn't it? I don't know. Oh, yeah, wait, that's why it never clicked, because obviously Ryan Reynolds is a sponsor into that team. He has his input. Did he decide to make the car a livery for Deadpool? I don't know. I didn't think about that before. Go Ryan Reynolds, though. Daniel had his own little livery. Not on the car, but he had his new helmet design, and then he came in with brand new merch for Rick Allen, which, if you haven't seen, is so random. It's like he partnered with Beats, and, well, who he is a partner with Beats, and then both also with Josh Allen. And they made this whole ad about a horse, and they made merch together. I don't completely know why. Like, I have no idea why, but it was sort of iconic. We don't actually have as much media moments as usual, I think. What else is left to say? Matthew Binotto to Sauber with Andreas Seidel gone. He's been moving a lot recently. I don't know where he's going, but he moved from McLaren to Sauber. And I'm interested to see what that leadership under Binotto is like. Might be interesting to see. Seats left. The seats we have left is Sauber, Orbi, Visa Cash App Orbi, Alpine, Williams, and Mercedes. It's closing down with that last Haas seat secured now. Sauber, so who will partner Hulk next year, and who will join Audi. Visa Cash App Orbi. Obviously, Daniel does not have a contract still. That may change after summer break. Alpine, who will take Esteban's seat. Haven't had too many rumours about who is going to take the Alpine seat, actually. Williams, I mean, who will take the Williams seat next year, but also there has continued to be a lot of rumours that Liam Lawson will not continue after the summer break. So, will someone fill in for him? Obviously, the rumours before had been Kimi Antonelli. They have lost momentum, I guess, but honestly, this is Formula 1, and if we know one thing, it's that literally anything can happen. And Mercedes, we really haven't heard too much about that recently either. Who's going to take that Mercedes seat? I still think the more likely, and this is just my opinion, the more likely scenario or outcome for that would be Kimi Antonelli in Williams for the second half of this season. And then they'll see if he's good enough to go to Mercedes next year and partner George Russell. Obviously, some other rumours were Max Verstappen might choose to go to Mercedes. I'm sure after the summer break, some rumours will become more real, more cemented, more factual. So I might leave those rumours to discuss a different time. Actually, I missed qualifying. My first time in my entire life of watching Formula 1 that I have ever missed a qualifying, and it was brutal. Because not only was I just not able to watch it, I was on a plane in the air with no Wi-Fi or no service, so I was just looking at the time, being like, anything could be happening in qualifying right now and I wouldn't know. It's annoying not being able to watch it, but not even being able to get updates about it or anything like that was so painful. Like, I have to watch, even if I'm out and about, I'll be watching free practice on my phone, or I'd be constantly refreshing Twitter or whatever to see updates on it, because I need to know what's going on, or else I can't, if there's Formula 1 on, I can't enjoy myself if I'm not watching it, because then I'm just thinking about what I'm missing. It didn't seem to be the most exciting qualifying session in the world, though. I mean, it seemed good enough, but so that's okay. If it was like the best qualifying ever, I would never forgive myself for missing that. I obviously watched the highlights back. I didn't actually get time to watch qualifying back from the start, but I see it as soon as, before the plane even landed, I was waiting to get service. Actually, you know how awful this is? There was really bad turbulence, and I'm not afraid of turbulence. I quite like it, to be honest. But the plane was getting lower, or it felt like it was getting lower. I know it doesn't actually get lower, but I was like, to be fair, if this plane goes down, I hope it's somewhere where there's service, so as we near the ground, I can see what's happening in qualifying. Like, that's awful. But I was like, if we crash, you know, at least on our way down, I'll get to see who's on pole. The obsession is horrendous, honestly. I'm glad it didn't crash because I could wait the extra hour to see what happened. But yeah, Joe impeded Max. I saw that. He got a 3-place grid penalty for that, but he was starting from the back of the grid anyway, after qualifying, I mean. So that ended up not affecting him too much. And I don't think it really affected Max's run in the end either. Tsunoda, I was a bit confused to see Tsunoda out in Q1 because I thought that the aim of Visa, Cash App, Orbi would be to get Yuki as far as they could, purely to give Daniel that toe, since Yuki would be starting from the back of the grid anyway. I don't think he purposely was out in Q1. I think he just perhaps didn't have the pace. I've never said perhaps in my life. But yeah, he was out alongside Sargent, Magnussen and Hulk. Not a great weekend for the Haas. And I did think Haas were going to be strong at this track. I thought McLaren and Haas, it was more suited to them. And neither, to be honest, were as dominant as I thought that they would be. Perez also just about into Q3. Risky again. I'm sure he was terrified at that moment. But luckily he did get into Q3 and he got quite far into Q3, ending up on the front row after Max's penalty. And I'm glad he did get into Q3 because I feel like he might have been fired on the spot if he did not get into Q3 with all of the drama that's going on around him. So I am happy for him getting into Q3 and getting onto the front row eventually. Strong from Ocon all weekend. This is going to be an Ocon praise episode, so if you hate Ocon, this episode probably isn't for you. But he had a really strong qualifying. He was getting everything out of that Alpine. And you could see it. He was in a completely different mood. He seemed self-assured. He seemed like he just got this new lease of life. And I loved to see it. He was definitely the stronger Alpine this weekend. Obviously out in Q2 then was Stroll, Bottas, Ricciardo, Gasly and Albon. I did see that Daniel pitted before setting his last time. I think, once again, the strategy did not really work out for a few of them. They didn't get the lap in as early as they could have, or they didn't have the tyres saved, or whatever it was. They were brought out too early, they were brought out too late. So that's a little disappointing from Daniel. I was hoping he'd have a better qualifying than that, and he definitely would have got a few more points had he. So yeah, that was probably a little disappointing from VCarb. Q3 as well, Perez had that magnificent lap. He had a 1:53.765, and then Max just puts it 6 tenths faster, 6 tenths up on that. Max is just unreal. How does he even do that? I don't know. Not much from free practice. Again, free practice 3 was on my travel day, so I was watching it in the airport. I saw Stroll's accident, which looked like it could have been bigger one than it was in the end, so I'm glad Stroll is okay. I never see anyone to crash in that part in Eau Rouge. Quite a similar place, wasn't it, to where Lando crashed in the rain. And after Aston Martin were saying that the one thing that they don't need this weekend is damage and to crash because, like, it costs money. That was not ideal, but, you know, Stroll has been quite strong recently, so, and, you know, it's a crash anyone could make, to be fair, so not that big of a deal. Okay, we'll talk about the race. So yeah, obviously there were 3 grid penalties. We had Yuki starting from the back. He had a 60-place grid penalty for his new parts of the power unit, and obviously that just puts him to the back of the grid. But if someone else, say that's why he was starting behind Joe, even though he knew he was getting the penalty before Joe got his penalty, because Yuki have to, you know, unless Joe got a 61-place grid penalty, Yuki would always be starting at the back. Max also got a penalty just for, again, same as Yuki, changing some parts of the power unit. Obviously, not huge changes, so it was only a 10-place grid penalty, but still, and obviously a good track to do it on because it is very easy to overtake at Spa, easier than a lot of other tracks, especially when you don't actually have the most dominant car by far, which we've seen Red Bull slide away from recently. So quite a few positions made up by Max during the race, which was quite good. Quite a strong race for Max. Anyway, Ocon again on fire. That's like one of my only notes on Ocon. Just on fire. He was just so fast. He wasn't even on the best strategy either, because him and Daniel pitted a lot. Daniel started on softs. Why did he start on softs? I was a bit surprised by that. I didn't get that completely. And even from lights out and away we go, Daniel, away he didn't go because he didn't make up any positions on the soft. So then he was just on tyres that were going to wear away a lot faster than everyone around him because no one else was on softs on the entire grid. And he didn't even get to make up positions because he was stuck in that traffic. He couldn't really get past. But luckily he did make the soft work until the first round of pit stops. Daniel is quite good at managing his tyres. So I'm sure that's why either Cash App or B felt safe enough to put him on it. I would have put Yuki on that strategy though, because Yuki probably had less to lose and more to gain by starting on softs from the back of the grid. Like he could have... Like the midfield is quite a dangerous place to be trying this different strategy because that's where most of the first lap, turn one instance can happen. Whereas when you're at the very back, like you have a bit more space to move around. So it might have made a bit more sense to put Yuki on that. But it worked out for Daniel in the end, sort of. So it was fine. I mean, I don't know how his race would have differed if he was on mediums or hards. He was one of the first pitters. The undercut, very, very powerful here. If you weren't on the undercut here, you were sort of screwed. So that's why the cars, I guess, they knew that Daniel... I mean, I'm guessing it was in hopes of a safety car, Daniel starting on the softs. I think most people would have been hoping for that, but that didn't come. But luckily enough, he did manage to make them last until that first round of pit stops that were to undercut the rest of the grid, and undercut they did. Because the cars that were in front of... We'll take Daniel as an example for the undercut. So Bottas, Albon and Ocon were all in front of Daniel at the start of the race, and then he undercut them all. Like Ocon way into the top 10 was greatly undercut, and he had to make his way back up, which he did because he was on fire, like I said. But yeah, Bottas and Albon couldn't then get past Daniel. So you know what? It was probably the right strategy. I think they got lucky it worked out though, if that makes sense. A lot of good tyre management. Sainz's tyre management, crazy. I mean, George's tyre management, obviously. Oh, it's painful to talk about George. I really thought this would be a different type of episode watching the race. I was excited to have a George win episode. But yeah, a different sort of... They had a job to manage those tyres and they completed that quite successfully. Red Bull were struggling. Straight line speed, we heard it a few times on the radio that was their main struggle. You could see it in Max as well. You could definitely see it in Perez. He lost positions and he struggled, especially in the last stint. He just lost all his pace. I don't know how much of that is... I don't know the biggest difference between Max and Checo, but I do know that Red Bull were not happy with Checo, or at least Helmut Marko said some not so lovely things about him after the race. Hamilton, as well as George, had quite the stint on hards. Obviously, Hamilton did an extra pit stop, but again, it just seems like the old Hamilton or the 2-year-old Hamilton. I know things have been a bit difficult for Hamilton recently, but his form has been incredible recently, unmatched, and he's been doing better than Max recently. Be exciting to see how that changes. I don't enjoy seeing Max not do well either. Obviously, there was a few slow stops in play. I know Charles had a slow stop, which aided the cars around him, Lando and Oscar, and a few of the other ones who would be challenging Charles a little. Max too, of course. Yuki did not have a great race. He did make it up to P16 after George's disqualification, with the Haas finishing behind him and Joe retiring from the race and Sargent. I mean, it was never going to be a hope for points for Yuki because of his penalty. It was quite a recovery race for him, and it was an okay recovery race anyway. Gasly also appeared to be struggling a bit in comparison with Ocon. I guess it was a bit to do with the undercut. I was a bit confused about... Ocon was sort of... I felt like he was undercutting at the wrong time. Like, he was sort of on a random undercut, but it worked out for him as well because he had the speed to overtake people. So I feel like he could have hit it a bit earlier than he did. But I guess Alpine know what they're doing because he had the speed. And I'm happy to be positive about Alpine for once because I know they've struggled recently, but it is nice to be able to talk about them positively because we love positivity in this podcast. Oh, and Oscar's pit stop when he went too far into the front, Jackman, and that guy took all of the pressure or the force from that. And especially Oscar, because you know how bad Oscar's going to feel about that. But luckily everyone was okay, and that guy got his few minutes or a few seconds anyway, of fame on the TV, which I'm sure he was happy about. I'd be happy about that. It did look like he was hurt though, but he was fine in the end. Like, even going to the last lap, would Hamilton overtake George? Would Oscar get Lewis? Would Charles catch up? Like, anything. It's just so exciting to have that again. And I mean, the battle between Charles and Oscar as well. I just love when both of them, I feel like, have quite a similar style racing, and they're probably two drivers you can trust a bit. Now, I know Oscar and Carlos have come together a few times, but I feel like Oscar and Charles together, like, they're going to push each other without pushing it too far, which was nice to see that clean fight that was just based off pure speed. And obviously the battle between Hamilton and George, unfortunately Hamilton locked up, 3 laps to go. So I don't know if he hadn't locked up, if he would have fought. It's quite a bit. I guess Hamilton and George are quite evenly in the standings. I mean, they both have their different points of doing well, so I guess maybe it makes sense for Mercedes not to want to do team orders because they actually don't know who will need it most coming to the end of the season. So the team orders, no team orders being there, didn't actually surprise me, and I thought that was probably the better move, to just let them fight it out but keep it clean. And I think they would have kept it clean anyway had they been a little closer to each other. It was obviously really special seeing George win. Oh, he was so happy as well. Like, nothing is better than a post-race team radio when the driver is just as excited as that. And it was only his third win ever, so, and also a 1-2 for Mercedes, but unfortunately George's car was underweight by 1.5 kg and he was disqualified after the race. Now, me and my sister looked at each other when they were showing like Toto Wolff, and we were like, girl knows something's wrong. He does not seem as excited about 1-2 as he should, and I think he probably had a feeling the car might be underweight. I think obviously the car was underweight because of the one stop in the end. So when your tyres have been going for so long, the rubber on them is being worn down, and that on all four eventually added up to 1.5 kg. That, and there not being an outlap. So usually the track is long in Spa. There was no outlap. They went straight into the pits, and usually on an outlap you would find the drivers sort of going to the parts of the track where a lot of rubber has been put down to pick up that extra weight, just to make sure that they reach the requirement. So George didn't have the opportunity to do that. 1.5 kg is though quite a significant amount to be underweight in Formula 1. And I feel like the team knew, or should have probably known, that it was more than likely this car will be underweight after George's one stop. He would have been gaining an advantage because that is a significant enough weight loss to be gaining that advantage in the car. So yeah, rightly so, obviously disqualified, but still painful. Rules are rules. So Lewis actually took the win, and I'm just as happy to see Lewis win, but I wish I would have liked to see Lewis actually win on the podium. I'm sure Charles's fans are a little disappointed that they didn't actually get to see Charles on the podium with Oscar and Lewis. I just feel bad because making a post, an Instagram post and everything, and then being like, oh, actually I didn't win. It's so rough. It's so rough. I'm so sorry, George. I always like George. I think he has probably been the sweetest driver I've met and heard stories about meeting, because he does try to stop for everyone. He didn't deserve that. Should we talk about Orbi? Visa Cash App Orbi. You know what? I still struggle to know when people say Orbi if they're talking about Red Bull or Visa Cash App Orbi. That's so bad because I nickname Visa Cash App Orbi as Orbi. And I think most people use Orbi when talking about Red Bull because that's obviously what stands for Red Bull. But okay, it's now the summer break. The rumours were that if Checo was a certain number of places behind Max in the champion standings at summer break, that was in the contract, that could be a clause to get out of the contract. And if he's a certain number of points and everything, and he's both those things, he is 8th currently in the championship standings. He's quite a bit, I think Russell is just ahead of him compared to his teammate who is 1st. Now, the Red Bull hasn't been as strong as it was at the start of the season, that's obvious, and Checo did struggle at the start of the season. So a lot of it comes from him not getting the most out of the car when the car was at its best. But now he's not exactly getting the most out of the current state of the car, if that makes sense. And Max, I would say Max probably is getting the most out of where the car is right now. The car's not at the place that Red Bull want it to be or need it to be. It's not at a place where they can easily win the championship right now. And obviously the factories closed over summer break and not allowed to work on the cars, but there is still testing and stuff to do. So we could see that change. Will Checo still be here after the summer break? Checo has been quite the conversation for a few weeks now, even in my own podcast. Him falling from starting P2, he finished P8, is definitely not good enough to Red Bull. Helmut Marko made that clear. I know Christian isn't going to be happy for them. As we speak, it's 1:08 right now. As we speak, I'm pretty sure Christian and Helmut are currently discussing the future of Checo Perez at Red Bull. And I don't know what they're going to decide. Checo was saying quite adamantly that he would be driving in Zandvoort, but he did not seem very happy yesterday after the race. He seemed upset, and we know that what a driver says isn't always the truth. We've seen that when a driver's been fired and they're saying one thing or another. I don't want to see Checo go. It's a really tough sport. It's a really harsh sport. One of my lights just broke, but that's okay. And I think Red Bull are concerned that they're going to lose the Constructors' Championship and that Max might lose his championship if he doesn't have that support from his teammate to take the points away from his competitors. I think there is probably more of a chance that he might lose his seat now. He won't be, I don't think he'll be in Red Bull next year anyway. It's just whether he gets fired now or later on in the year, unless obviously he makes this big, huge turn in the rest of the year. If he is kept on, then obviously he'd see out his contract. But I can't see that happening. So let's just say they do remove Checo. I'm not saying that is what I want. We're just going to look at the other scenarios. Who would be replacing Checo? Carlos? Haven't seemed to be looking at Carlos. There was rumours when Carlos first got fired from Ferrari that he was completely closed off from going to Red Bull. He has been part of the Red Bull family before. There's been no rumours about Carlos to Red Bull. I'm going to rule Carlos out. I think the most likely option now is a mid-season swap with Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez. Now, Daniel and Sergio have been in quite similar boats recently. Daniel did not have a good start to the season at all. But recently he has improved, and recently he has been more consistent and probably just that tiny bit on top of Yuki, say, in the last 6 races. Overall, throughout the season, Yuki is definitely on top, but just recently I would say the recent trend is that Daniel has been a little stronger, whereas Perez has been quite consistently weak throughout the season at some points. But we know how good of a driver Checo is and can be, and how incredible of a teammate that he can be to Max. So would Daniel be ready to take that Red Bull seat? I don't know. I don't think that if he did replace Checo, I don't think he would be expected. He's not expected, I don't think, to be another Max if he was in that Red Bull seat. I think they just want him to do enough to help Max more and to just be that bit better than Checo. They know that he can drive the Red Bull car. The Red Bull car suits Daniel quite a lot. Both Daniel and Checo bring in quite a lot of sponsors and stuff, so I wouldn't say it's anything to do with sponsors or anything like that. Why Yuki isn't being considered for Red Bull, I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's something to do with his contract with Honda, with whatever it is. I don't know why they're not considering Yuki more. So I'm going to take Yuki out of the equation as well, because there's been no indication that he's ever been a suggestion, unfortunately. especially with the dedication he has given to AlphaTauri and Visa Cash App or B over his entire career, actually. It's quite disappointing. Liam Lawson, I don't think he would or should be promoted over Daniel for the second half of the season. Okay, I think the main scenario that makes more sense, if Checo is getting replaced mid-season, put Daniel in for the rest of the season, see how he does, put Liam Lawson or Iwasa, I guess, in the car, then reevaluate at the end of the year who you want to put in the Red Bull, whether it be Daniel or Liam Lawson or Iwasa, whoever it is. That makes the most sense to me. If Checo did stay on for the rest of the year and then did get dropped at the end of the year, that would be a lot of a harder decision because you have a full year then. I don't know. There is a testing day, a filming day actually, for Liam, Iwasa, Daniel and Yuki. Daniel and Yuki are driving the Orbi and then they're also driving the ATO3, I think it is. And then Liam, I think Liam and Iwasa are also driving the the AlphaTauri. I honestly think this filming day, which Daniel himself has said that he thinks it might be important and that he needs to do his best and that he knows how things happened for him after the Silverstone filming day. I think this might be more of a Liam versus Iwasa situation. That's my opinion and I could be completely wrong. So these are just my opinions. Everyone has their own different opinions on this, so let's just be respectful of everyone's different opinions on this matter. Let me know your own in a respectful manner. Because remember, positivity, the final chicane is all for positivity in Formula 1. I don't like change. I'm not one for change. I like things to stay as they are. So I would be happy enough for the grid to stay as it is right now. I also do not control a Formula 1 team, and how Red Bull do and if Max gets the championship or not does not financially profit or take away from me in any sort of way. So that's why, I don't know. But I'm interested to hear what everyone thinks. I think over the summer break, some sort of announcement will be made, whether it will be Daniel 2 or B for next year. His contract will be secured. I'd say he'd probably be looking for multi-year. I think Daniel doesn't deserve to get fired anymore. I know it was up in the air whether he would be allowed to continue, but I don't think he deserves to get fired. That's my opinion on that. But then a lot of the rumours is that Red Bull don't want to keep Daniel in Visa Cash App or B. They either want to promote him or let him go, which is interesting because, you would love to see Liam or Iwasa in that or B. But would they do better than Daniel? I don't know. Liam had a testing day and apparently wasn't too successful. It's a lot of panic. Anyway, so what are your opinions on the Checo situation? I keep hitting into this mic, so sorry if that's annoying anyone. It's not on, but I just mean it's shaking, because this microphone is attached to it, so I have to keep it close by. It's a lot to try form my thoughts on the whole Checo situation. Daniel has also been in a really good mood all weekend, I will say. And did you see the video? Him and Max, I think they probably flew to the airport together on the helicopter and then went back to maybe Monaco on Max's jet. But did you see the video of Daniel and Max running into Perez when they were leaving? And Daniel, I think offered or asked Perez if he had gotten his wine, because I think Daniel was giving out some of his DR3 wine at that for the summer break. I saw a few comments being like, this is either Daniel being so happy that he just feels generous or like a goodbye. I don't want anyone to leave, okay? Once again, I don't like change. I want things to stay as they are. But yeah, Daniel offered, asked Checo, I think, if he had his wine. And walking with Max to the plane was sort of funny. Poor Perez, though. The stress and the mental anguish that Perez is probably feeling right now over everything, I don't wish on any Formula 1 driver. But once again, I'm glad I'm not in the position to be making those decisions. I don't work in Formula 1. Not that I don't want to. If anyone wants to give me a job in Formula 1, I will accept it. So yeah, let me know what you think. Is Perez going to be in Formula 1 after summer break? Is Daniel going to be in that Red Bull ever again? Is Liam Lawson going to be in Formula 1? Why isn't Yuki being considered for the Red Bull seat? All of that. A lot to talk about there. let's go back to the riddle of the week. So, the answer to this week's riddle of the week is Heinz Harald Frentzen. So, he is a German former Formula One driver, and he competed in Formula One, as I said, from 1994 to 2003. He made his debut with Seba in 1994, and his most successful time in Formula One came when he joined Williams in 1997. He won his first race at San Marino Grand Prix. He finished second in the championship behind just his teammate Jacques Villeneuve, and he had several podium finishes there. He won the French Grand Prix as well in 1999, driving for Jordan. And 1999 again, Italian Grand Prix, another win for Jordan, and he finished third in the championship. 1999 was definitely his most successful season. It was the pinnacle of his career. He just finished, I think Mika Hakkinen finished P1. Did Mika Hakkinen win? Yeah, Hakkinen won 1999, and then Eddie Irvine came second. Yeah, and he was in contention for that 1999 title right until the second last race. After Jordan, he stayed in Jordan until 2001, then Prost in 2001 and Arrows in 2002. He got 2 pole positions in his career, both of which with the Williams, and he had 18 podium finishes in Formula One. He ended his Formula One career in 2003 after his brief stint with Seb and Arrows, and yeah, he had quite this smooth driving style, so that's probably what more he's known from. He got the performance out of those cars. He's definitely one of the more famous, one of the more respected, I guess, underdog drivers who have never won a world championship before. After Formula One as well, he took part in DTM and endurance racing, so he's a racer, and obviously he's still rocking about today. He's not that old. Is that it? That was our riddle of the week. So yeah, a lot to debrief on today, a lot to think about, a lot of thoughts to settle. I am going to take a little step back from motorsport for the next 2 weeks, but there's still a podcast coming out next Monday. My interview with the Red Bull design engineer is out on Monday. It's finally been approved by comms, so I'm really excited for that to come out. I had honestly the nicest chat with her anyway. And yeah, then there probably won't be another, unless there's like an emergency podcast episode, there might not be another podcast episode until the Zandvoort podcast review, but I will still make my TikToks every day, so you can always follow me on TikTok, Kristen Boylan X. That's all for today's episode. I have a lot to do today. I have to find this final chicane board first of all and unpack both mentally and physically from my holidays. So yeah, I will see you for Zandvoort. Enjoy the Formula One summer break. Goodbye.